Hi, Colin. Yeah, nice to meet you again.
Certainly.
Yeah, and we drink tea. Yeah, while we're talking about my Vietnam and also Vietnam in your mind, Vietnam in your heart. So I know you very well, but for our audience, could you please to talk a little bit about how long have you been in Vietnam? Yeah, and what do you think about my Vietnam?
Okay. So I've been in Vietnam forever. I first came here in 1995, so my 30 years now. I've been here most of this time. I was back in Europe a little bit in between. But I chose Vietnam. My birthday's on the National Day of Vietnam, so people say it's maybe fate because I was born on 2nd of September.
Yeah.
That's why I'm in Vietnam. But it's certainly a country I love. As I'm a guest in the country, I also like to help the country. So I do get involved in things like the Vietnam Business Forum, advising the government and helping in charities wherever I can.
Yes, I know you have a lot of contribution in different sectors and also in education.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. With your experience, especially global experience, so could you please to share with us some lessons and also your opinion about the key elements, attractive elements of Vietnam that help us to attract more international tourists to come to Vietnam?
Yes. So even when I first came to Vietnam 30 years ago, I could always see its potential. So it was a very different place 30 years ago. But I recognized in the Vietnamese people that great ability and flexibility. So this has always been part of, I think, Vietnam's appeal. So fortunately, as a foreigner, I can kind of think and see Vietnam through the eyes of a foreigner. But also, having been here so long, I can understand the Vietnamese perspective as well, and then hopefully bring the two together. So Vietnam, what foreigners are always impressed by is the activity of the place. Everything is always moving. Things are happening so fast. There's like an excitement, a buzz to it. Yes. And that is like a national character, which is very positive. So, of course, when you go on holiday, you want to see something positive and happy. And I think fundamentally the Vietnamese are happy. And they've always, even in harder times, they were positive and smiling. Yeah. And so this is...
In any context, right?
Yes, yes. Very resilient, very kind of strong people, and a strong national identity and culture. So that's the first thing that a foreigner would notice. But of course, there are other places with those kinds of characteristics as well. So then you come on to why Vietnam in particular. Now, Vietnam has done very well in terms of tourism recently.
Yes.
It's actually something I've been quite involved with. My wife's business is largely in tourism. So I'd helped out with that for some years, and they'd actually brought in the first mass tourism operations into Vietnam, which I experienced and helped with. So it gave me a very good idea about how tourism actually works in Vietnam.
Yes. So not only you, but also your whole family have a good contribution to Vietnam.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, so if we have to choose one new message about Vietnam to communicate to tourists, so what do you think the dominant message that we can communicate to?
Yeah, I think the key lesson here is what we call in the tourism field is being a destination. So there are loads of places that just have the convenience. So of course, when a tourist travels, you need overall convenience. You need a good airport, you need a good hotel, you need good infrastructure. But that's not enough in itself. And this was a mistake, I think, made a little bit simplistically in the early days of thinking, okay, if you just have that, then people will come here because they'll like it. So often in the early tourism promotion, you'd see someone would say, oh, here's a shopping mall and it's very modern. Well, of course, in England or America, we have modern shopping malls. If we wanted to go to a shopping mall, we'd just go to the one down our street. We wouldn't, fly halfway around the world to see a shopping mall. So yes, you do need nice hotels, nice facilities, but why would you come halfway around the world, with your family maybe, and that's not convenient, Why would you fly that long to go to a particular place, because Vietnam's obviously not the only country in the world, and not even the only country in Southeast Asia. It's got some strong competitors. It's got Thailand, it's got a number of places. And why does a tourist, when they're looking at a brochure or reading online about choosing where to go when they're sitting in Europe or wherever, why would they choose one country over another?
Yes.
And this is about being a destination. This is the brand. This is what makes it interesting. Why would I go all that distance to see something boring? No. I'd go all that distance to see something interesting.
Yeah.
And also you have different tourists from different source countries have a little bit of a different emphasis. So Western tourists tend to be much more cultural. Other tourists, let's say from other markets like the Russian or Chinese markets, are often looking for a little bit more of the convenience. But again, you're catering differently to different markets. But as the tourists become more sophisticated, the cultural aspect is the most important one. So I mentioned just the general vibe of the country, the energy and so on. That's important, but not enough in itself.
Yeah.
So many cities in Asia, when I travel to them, and I won't say which ones in particular because it wouldn't be polite, but you get to some of these cities and they're kind of a bit modern, but there's nothing special about them. You get to those cities in other countries outside of Vietnam, but in this region, and you just think, like, why did someone build a city here? There's nothing special about it. It's really boring. And if I woke up in the morning and looked out at that city, I'd forget which one I'm in because they all look the same.
Yes.
So in the rush for being modern and convenient, there's a risk that everything just looks the same. And some of the countries in Asia have unfortunately fallen into that trap. But Vietnam has to stay true to its own culture. This is why somewhere like Japan is so successful, because it's very modern, but at the same time very culturally unique. Vietnam, I think, needs to be modern, but keep its cultural uniqueness and be a destination. So people want to choose Vietnam because of that brand, because there's something special there that they can't get elsewhere.
Yes. But what is the brand identity of Vietnam in the mind of tourists?
Yes. So Vietnam is fortunate that it has some, UNESCO sites and some great landscapes and traditions and history.
Yes.
So I think that has to be at the forefront of whatever's being done. So a lot of the places like Halong, Ninh Binh, Hoi An, these are genuinely beautiful, unique places.
Nature.
Well, there's a mix of nature and the history side of it.
Nature, history, people, as you mentioned.
Then people, food, it's the overall experience. And Vietnam has that cultural advantage and needs to push that more clearly as well. So at the moment, tourism in Vietnam is doing very well. Like where I'm from in England, I think it's 500,000 a year now coming here. And whenever I go back to Europe and I mention Vietnam, they're like, oh yeah, that's so nice. My cousin went there, my nephew went there.
Yes.
And so Vietnam needs to build further on that.
Yeah.
But again, it's this balance between the culture and the convenience.
Yes.
So firstly on the culture, yes, the food is unique. The vibe of the place is unique. And it has fortunately, some very unique individual sites. But again, this is where I think the people, the locals within those sites, because if you wake up to a beautiful scenery every day, you just think, oh, it's there. But you'd be surprised pleasantly how much other people who haven't seen it before will value it. So there was an example of Hoi An. Some years ago, I actually met with some of the tourism authorities there, and I hadn't seen Hoi An for like many, many years. And when I got there, I was worried, because I saw it in the 1990s and it was very charming, and I was worried that they would have destroyed that accidentally by just building high-rises and destroying the cultural, historical heritage.
Yes.
And I was very pleasantly surprised when the tourism authorities there explained to me that they really had understood what they had. They said, you know, they couldn't compete with Da Nang in terms of being high-tech or a major international, you know, major city, but they had a UNESCO site, and that was going to be their business.
Yes.
And they actually restored it beautifully, and they got it completely right. And I was so relieved to see, you know, after some intervening years, that they'd actually done that. And more places need to follow that kind of example, not overbuild in the historical areas,
Yes.
to keep that uniqueness. Because if you go somewhere and, you know, it's totally crowded and it looks like anywhere else, it's not. You wouldn't fly that distance
Yes.
just to experience that.
Yes. So I also agree with you that the culture and also Vietnamese people are the very attractive elements of the Vietnam brand identity.
Yes.
So what do you think about these two components are also the key attractive elements to apply to another sector?
Okay, so for business,
Yes.
it's, of course, someone traveling here on business, especially as an expat, will want to live in a nice place. Vietnam is one of the safest, most affordable places in the world. And if you look at the rankings for expats coming here, it's one of the best places in the world to be an expat. But for someone even just, you know, looking generally at investing in Vietnam, in manufacturing, in high-tech, whatever field, financial services, Vietnam has some even stronger attributes when you look at it that way. So very often you hear of multinational companies that outsourced a lot of their manufacturing previously to China, but then they didn't want over-dependence on one particular source. So they do China plus one strategy. So the plus one, the additional country they'll move manufacturing into, tends to be Vietnam. Because if you look at what you need for, let's say, high-tech manufacturing, semiconductors, that kind of thing now, you need a very highly skilled workforce, a very stable environment, and supply chain integration. There's almost nowhere else in the world that can match Vietnam on that.
Yes.
So a lot of this manufacturing, it can't go into Mexico, it can't go into Indonesia, wherever. It has to be Vietnam. And of course, you know, nothing's perfect. So there is, you know, some paperwork and things like that when you invest in Vietnam. I remember I was at a conference recently and I think it was some Americans were complaining a bit about the paperwork and saying it was a bit slow. But one of the Americans said, look, you have to accept this because where else are you going to put your factory? There is nowhere else in the world that is as good as Vietnam to actually take this factory. So you have to come here. Vietnam has enormous strengths as a business brand.
Yes.
Many years ago, when I mentioned in Europe that, you know, I'm living in Vietnam, everyone's like, oh, you know, that must be third world, and, you know, what's the business like, and it's all cheap labor. Now, when I mention Vietnam, people have a completely different view.
You change your mind?
Well, they changed their minds. I always had the right impression of Vietnam. I always saw the potential. But now, people are saying, oh, yeah, that's like a really interesting, important place for business. And it's not as risky as it used to be. It's actually much more serious, which is good. And I think that will continue into the future as well.
Yes.
So in terms of business brand, Vietnam's got one of the strongest in the world, literally.
Yes.
Tourism is doing very well, and tourism's growing very fast here. But the business brand is even stronger, I'd say.
Yes. Yes, I know the public management and especially in administrations, had also some problem to solve. But I think it could be changed with the digital transformation. Yeah, so what do you think about Vietnam in the digital transformation area?
I mean, just firstly on public administration, I mean, I work with I volunteer with the Vietnam Business Forum advising the government. And one very important thing to say is the government here does listen and does consult. So when I put forward an idea, or other colleagues in the VBF or Chambers of Commerce put forward ideas, these are taken seriously. And the government is flexible to this because in the modern world, we're all learning all the time. We're all improving all the time. And the way the Vietnam government works is very much with that at heart. And they do long-range planning, long 5, 10, 20-year plans, which give an immense stability. That's one of the big attractions of Vietnam, is both the flexibility where it's needed to adapt to the modern world, and the stability to be, safe and dependable for foreign investors. Because if you're putting a factory in, the life of that factory could be 50 years. You need to know the country is that stable and secure.
Yes.
So Vietnam is absolutely perfect on that, I'd say. And that's one of the big attractions.
Yes. The enterprise in Vietnam, almost enterprise in Vietnam are small or in medium size.
Yes.
So it's really difficult to apply technology for innovation. So with your global experience, can you share with us some international lessons, in terms of policies and how to motivate the...
This is one of the big questions that I've discussed often with the government as well.
Yes.
Is most of the productivity gains and economic growth in Vietnam in the last while have been through the foreign invested sector. So one of the very key statistics here is a Vietnamese person working in Vietnam for a foreign company is 3.7 times more productive than a Vietnamese person working in Vietnam for a Vietnamese company. So the bulk of the economy, 80% of the employment, is in the SME sector. And Vietnam will become first world when that bulk of the population comes up to the same standard of productivity as those working in the foreign invested sector. So the government is often asking us in the Vietnam Business Forum, what's the secret of success? And we say, look, there's no secret here. This is international best practice. And we want to share it with you. Because if Vietnam is more first world, it's better for our supply chains. We have more customers. The standards are higher, which makes it easier for us to operate in Vietnam. So there's been a lot of, whenever I have the opportunity to transfer that knowledge, my specialization is human resources, so I look at organizational structure of why things developed in the West the way they did, but how that can be culturally adapted to Vietnam as well. So it's not a matter of just copying the West. Where I've seen cases where Vietnam has even overtaken international standards by taking the best of both. Because the Vietnamese are very smart, very entrepreneurial, very flexible. And that's especially around technology. So if we look at people, how many people use AI, it is almost double the rate in Vietnam to the West. Vietnamese are very fast and flexible. So obviously you don't want to copy the West by having only half the people using AI. You want to take what's best from both. And this is where Vietnam can become literally one of the most productive countries in the world by doing, genuinely. So the Vietnamese, like I said, they're very fast, they're very adaptive, they're very, very smart. That's a national characteristic, and that's the perfect combination in modern business, isn't it? So in adopting technology, you've got, the very official ones big companies may try to do, the big old fixed systems. But AI is completely different. It's generative, it's like a consumer product. You just talk to it, there's no technical skill. So that takes a lot of just intelligence and adaptability, and that's what the Vietnamese have. So most Vietnamese will, especially the young people, they're all giving their jobs to AI. They're very fast on this. So often I'll go into a company and I'll ask the top management, foreign company, Vietnamese company, whatever, how much AI has been used in your company? And they're like, well, we don't have an official management plan yet. I go and ask the staff, what are you doing? They're doing everything, but they haven't told their boss. So it's more almost a grassroots movement of that technology adoption. So what I always tell companies is, okay, get a grip of this. Find out already who's using AI for what in your company. and start not trying to control it or stop it, but to build on that and have that systemized across a company. So that applies in every sector, tourism included, of course.
Yes.
But Vietnam, I think, it's very well suited somehow to the fast-changing modern world. If you look at about Vietnamese culture again, I mean, you look at the Vietnamese traffic. You know, they always joke in Vietnam, people always find a way around things, right? And the modern world, it is uncertain, and you've got to find your way around it. And what better people than the Vietnamese to find their way around something that's kind of fast-moving and chaotic, right? People in Vietnam live that life. In Europe, you know, our life is very steady and predictable, and you don't have to try.
Yeah.
So they don't. That's why they don't use AI.
Yes.
I'm about to go next week back to Switzerland for some business there, and it is so slow in comparison with Vietnam. It's really frustrating because everybody's comfortable. You know, they don't need to adapt. Vietnam, that adaptation from its history as well, is in the Vietnamese blood.
Yeah.
So this is, again, why Vietnam has almost the perfect combination for the modern world.
In terms of the collaboration between the government authorities and also the business leader, so what do you think about the strategy to have the productive and effective collaboration between these two stakeholders, you know, to build a strong Vietnam brand to investor?
Yeah, so the Vietnam Business Forum, which I've been involved with for some years now, the only time the World Bank has ever managed to set up something this effective is in Vietnam. So we have all the chambers of commerce together and a lot of other stakeholders and the government working this closely together. So it worked in Vietnam, partly because of the culture, but also the flexibility of the government. And many times I'm at the VBF, we have delegations in from other countries observing because they want to do something like it. But they've never quite managed to do it as successfully as in Vietnam. So I think the government approach here of being, as I said, this kind of the listening and the willingness to adapt in the best interest and being stable. It's a very unusual combination because in countries where, you know, the administration just changes very regularly, they can't have long-term plans, and it's all a bit messy and people think very short-term. Vietnam has the advantage of this long-term planning. And if you look at what that's achieved in Vietnam, so it's had, for the last 20 years, the highest rate of wealth creation in the world, and for the next 20 years is slated to have the same. That doesn't happen by accident. You can't be the most successful country in the world in terms of building wealth by accident, because there are loads of people obviously who would want to do that, but Vietnam's done it best. So, you know, if there's a question mark ever about how effective has the government been, just look at the results. You cannot achieve those things if it wasn't really good.
Yes, yeah, I agree with you. Yes. So without tourism, in your opinion, which are the sectors that we can attract the investment from the international stakeholders? Yeah,
so I think the high-tech sector is important. So, I mean, you've got the things like the semiconductor manufacturing, robotics coming in, and also maybe things like there was the International Finance Center plan.
Yes.
I could see that working as well.
You see the potential success?
Yes.
For it? Yes.
And also just the whole AI field. So there is an active startup community here. There is certainly the capability, because something like AI, you need a lot of very smart people all in one place.
Yes.
And not every country has that at the same level as Vietnam. So you already see a lot of you know, fintech companies, AI, even research coming into Vietnam. So in the 30 years I've been here, you know, it started with low labor cost manufacturing, things like garments. Now you look at people like Samsung and NVIDIA, not just putting the manufacturing here, they put the research here. So one of the examples, when people in Europe ask me, sort of like, how far along is Vietnam? I give them that example, actually, of Samsung. So a lot of people like me use Apple phones, right? And that's the byword for American technological superiority or whatever. And they put billions into researching on that kind of high tech.
Yes.
Now, Samsung said, okay, we're putting our smartphone research and development center in Hanoi. And it was like thousands of people. And I was wondering when I saw that a couple of years ago, I was like, what would thousands of people do on smartphone research?
Yes.
What they did was they produced the first ever AI native smartphone before Apple. So Vietnamese, a few thousand Vietnamese researchers in Hanoi outperformed in technology Apple in America. That's the standard. And of course, that will happen more and more, I think, in the future. So, that's, Vietnam's gone from, a low-income, very low-level manufacturing all the way up the value chain already.
Yeah.
It's not just high-tech electronics manufacturing.
Yes.
It's now the actual research is being done here. And that will continue more and more, I see.
Yes. Yes. So very good opportunity for,
Yes, definitely,
Vietnam and
Yeah.
also to collaborate for the Vietnamese researchers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that also the reason that the Asia R&D Connect Center from on the college University of Economic Ho Chi Minh City will be launched in next week.
Yes.
So what do you think about this project?
Yeah, so I've seen actually very good coordination between government, the universities,
Yes.
and business in Vietnam, and really good. So in some of the technology fields, for producing engineers, the government will have a policy of we're going to need this many technical people.
Yes.
The universities then team up with often foreign investors to produce those people at a large scale. And I suppose, that's what used to happen in Europe before. I lived in Germany for a while where it's famous for doing that. It doesn't do that anymore, but Vietnam does. So this is what really drives forward the economy. So this collaboration between business and universities here, and as in your project as well, is really global first-class standard.
Yes. And you think that with this aim, we can call different researchers from the world to contribute to this center and to support for Vietnam government and also the business leaders for different, recommendation and also solution?
Yes, certainly. I mean, there's loads of ideas out there in the world, and Vietnam should be able to access all of them. But I'd say also Vietnam should be more confident that it is world leading in some areas already, and don't just copy what someone else has done. Try to do even better. So take what's best from elsewhere, but put that Vietnamese culture on top of it.
Yes. So which sector you think that we will be confident to be leading in Asian or Asia?
I think, like I said,
maybe in 5 years and 10 years.
Yes, so I mean, I think exactly these areas of high-tech manufacturing and artificial intelligence, I see those as big ones for Vietnam. So, things like manufacturing robots.
Yes.
China's obviously going to do that, but I think the number 2 country would be somewhere like Vietnam when it gets moving on it. Artificial intelligence, yes, the same thing. It's not just deploying someone else's AI, it's actually being fundamental to leading in technology fields within it.
Yes.
And obviously making the most of it when it's available.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Thank you for your positive forecast for Vietnam economic in the future. Yes.